Welcome, everybody, to Practical Psychology Podcast, episode 25. Today, we are very welcome to have Amanda joining us again from beautiful Edmonton, Alberta. Amanda is a mental health counselor in Edmonton, Alberta. She's very passionate about women's health, attachment, children and adults therapy. And thank you, Amanda. Welcome again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me back.
So, Amanda, I hear that you're close to graduation and starting to practice. And one of the
hmm
major steps here is they call it the capstone research paper that you're doing it for the finals here. Can you tell us a little bit about that thesis?
Yeah. So my capstone, I'm not like doing the first-hand research. It's more of like the literature review and like filling in those gaps. So I wanted to talk about attachment because I'm really passionate about that. And I was like, wow, this has really been deeply covered. So I branched off a little bit into looking at earned secure attachment. And basically what that is for people who weren't able to develop that secure attachment earlier, whether that was through adverse circumstances, different caregiver challenges, helping them kind of create and develop that secure attachment later in life, childhood, adolescence, even adulthood.
Oh, great here. So Amanda here, I want to tell the viewers here who are not familiar with the Capstone project.
hmm
Basically, it is a research psychology project here because
hmm
clinical psychology is based on what we call evidence-based, meaning not
hmm
personal opinion of the counselor, but based on research. Same as people see a medical doctor, medicine is based on rigorous research, and Amanda is particularly in some of what we call the literature review, meaning what the research
hmm
have done before.
Yes, yeah. So, with this, of course, the literature that I'm reviewing, it needs to be peer reviewed. We're looking for substantial and looking again for that evidence-based component with it. And so some of it is like studies that have studied the correlation of, hey, these like randomized control trials said this result, and we found that we're making this assumption, this assumption, this assumption. And so taking the different studies, taking the different firsthand studies that people have done, and also looking at the literature and there's like a mix, right? Like I'm looking at quantitative and qualitative. So studies that really look at the numbers and are like 88 people did this questionnaire and we found that 80% of them had a alternate attachment figure. Then there's another one where it's like we followed this one lady for 2 years during the process of psychotherapy and like observing how her anxious avoidant attachment and avoidant personality disorder changed through that time. So really getting that like rich nuance in the data of like that overarching picture and also that like kind of more in-depth close-up look.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, yeah. And so it's
Mhm.
really gathering that literature and then like, okay, what's a big gap in the literature? And I would like to cover them all, but like,
Mhm.
for example, earn secure attachment, there's a decent bit of literature, and there's some people who are like, is this a thing? There are questions about attachment theory. Um, but a lot of the literature is based on females. So that's a
Mhm.
huge gender gap in the research, right? There's also a lot of concerns about like the measure that is used because it's a retrospective. So, sorry, words. Basically, it's like looking at people's report of their past experiences, and so
Yeah.
there's that self-report, there's that like, some
Mhm.
people have
Mhm.
concerns that there's like a mood induction bias, like, oh, you were sad when you answered the question and that affects it. And,
Yeah.
I know it's a lot, and my brain is um so even narrowing down that gap of like I'm trying to
Oh,
take this
yeah.
topic of insecure attachment and like make it bigger. And like fill in another piece of the puzzle.
Very good here. Amanda, to confirm, this term that you are studying is called the earned attachment security?
Yeah, so there's a few different terms for it in the literature.
Okay, yeah.
So there's earned secure attachment, earned
Mm.
attachment security. Um,
Okay,
some literature refers to it as individuated secure attachment,
okay, I see.
versus
Okay,
pseudo
yeah, okay.
secure. Yeah,
It's okay here
some just
because when
call
we talk about the academia here, there's the technical terms and yeah.
yeah. So I've just decided to refer to it as earned secure attachment, ESA,
Okay, okay.
just
I say
because there's
okay.
so many, yeah, there's so many ways that it's referred to that I'm like, you know what, we're talking about the same thing, and where we're not, we'll clarify.
And Amanda here, ESA earned secure attachment. I'm very curious to learn more. Because me personally, when I first started my early career, I worked with children and youth, and
Hmm.
um, and a lot of the children and youth they might come from the foster family environment. Maybe when they were born, their parents already passed away because of substance use and other tragedies. And some of these children can go into maybe 10 foster homes within the first 5 years. And so when they come through the psychiatrist, they will have a different sort of diagnosis. One of them is the attachment disorder. And they have a lot of behavior challenges because of that insecure attachment here. So I'm very curious to learn more about this earn secure attachment, to kind of recover for these support these
Yeah.
individuals.
Yeah. I know
Yeah.
when I started researching it, I was like, earn secure attachment. That's so cool. Oh, this is how they say you earn
Yes.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you keep looking, and there's also different perspectives that challenge it and say like, and challenge attachment theory and say like, okay, well, attachment theory says you build this insecure secure attachment, and that's stuck for the rest of your life. Um, and I think like while
Yeah.
those time periods are
Mm.
crucial and are important, like as we talked about a little bit before, and those are very, very important times. I think that like how discouraging would that be if it was just like, yeah, I'm screwed up. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't know how to love. Like, no. Um, and so, yeah, some of the literature kind of challenges that attachment theory and says like we also need to consider like cognitive psychology in this and like developmental psychology in this,
Yeah.
and approach it from a more interdisciplinary perspective. Um, and so when we look at the literature, for example, one study is children who are in an orphanage, um,
Yeah.
and they randomly assigned some children to be put into like, I mean, it's a foster home, but like a loving, half of them were like left and half of them were put into loving foster homes, which I feel uncomfortable about. But like if some of them were gonna, anyways, we won't get into that.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but some of these kids were in the foster homes, and they found the like in comparison, there was an increase in those secure attachment like factors and some of the like relational trust that was built.
Mm.
What's the name of the intervention? But it's like a trust building relational intervention.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
and mostly what we get from that is just that like we start to see that like changing a kid's attachment when a kid has been in the system and
Oh.
institutionalized children, it is possible to shift that attachment.
Yeah. And in a way here, Amanda, you mentioned about the two sides. It looks like some of the historic ideas is attachment is kind of set during the childhood. And it looks like there's some
Hmm.
sort of development here to, especially some of the neuroscience, the plasticity of the brain here. People can learn new pathways and all that. And in a way, it's quite important because that really challenge the ability to change for medicine, psychology, for individuals.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's rather empowering, right? Because again, it doesn't make it so
Mhm.
that we're just stuck. And you think like, okay, you think therapy in general, you think self-growth, self-actualization. However, um, if we're able to look at like what are the components, what are the parts of our insecure
Mhm.
attachment,
Yes,
um,
yeah.
then we can say like, okay, so actually a big part of our insecure attachment is like an alternative attachment figure.
Mm,
A
mm,
lot of those are grandparents. And so we
mm,
see this in children, we see this in adolescents. But the thing that's really cool too is you look at studies that talk about like couples going
mhm,
through like relational therapy, and it's like only a 5-week program, but there's like statistically significant improvements in like mentalization. Um, and like there's a few categories that I've kind of lumped into that, but like being able to understand their partner, understand themselves, view their partner, which is like a big part of our insecure attachment. So it is really interesting when you see that like it's across these different ages, and
mm,
it's not just like, I mean, a lot of the literature is more primarily the literature that started to say like attachment can change kind of came out of more like it was more focused initially on like trauma or like negative
mm,
life events to say like, yeah, you might have a secure attachment, but like if a trauma happens or your parents die or something, like you may have a
mm.
negative attachment change and develop an insecure attachment. But now people have kind of started looking at it, well, for the past little while to say like positive attachment change can happen too.
Oh yeah. And Amanda here, I'm very interested to know more about this, the alternative attachment figure. Yeah, because
Hmm.
for I guess for the majority of the research back in the days, the first attachment is people were born and with the mother,
Hmm.
the caregiver, and it's interesting to know about this alternative attachment figure with the relationships. People typically go through various relationships and the spouses, partner, grandparents, and yeah, great.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And that's part of why I kind of what I enjoyed about looking into it too is looking beyond some of those like stereotypical relationships. And not that they're bad and they're stereotypical for a reason.
Yeah.
But to like it's like, okay, attachment as a kid to your parents or like gaining secure attachment through like a relationship with a significant other. But it's like, okay, well, what about for adults who are single?
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and so with those alternate attachment figures, that goes a little bit even into like emotion focused therapy and like how we can
Yeah.
create that safe space and help.
Mhm.
Well, and then there's like treatment planning and like, okay, these are some of the things that security consists
Mhm.
of. We can help them with that, but like being that safe space. And there's even like some of the literature talks about even like religious transformation or like spiritual experience where like God, well, the study is like Nordic literature, which is like more around like Christianity and Jesus. But it like talks about people after that experience having a different like perception of the world and almost like seeing God as
Mhm.
that secure base. And so
Yeah.
looking at it in that way, you can kind of see like God as like that alternate attachment figure in a way too, right? So it's like
Mhm.
grandparents, therapists, spirituality, God, faith, aunts, uncles. There's really like there's a lot to unpack in the alternative attachment figure. And I mean the religious faith part gets a little more complicated. And I'm still unpacking that, but yeah, it's a lot more
Mhm.
complex than just like, did your parent, right? Um,
Mhm.
the one study on on alternate attachment figures, even just saying how like those with secure attachment have like a higher reflective functioning, like they're able to kind of reflect more on their experience, others' experiences, the connection. Um,
Mhm.
and a kid, even if they have like a secure attachment with just one parent, that can actually like help. that they can still have like a high level of reflective functioning, and that can still be protective even if it's just with one parent too. So,
Yeah. And following this idea here, Amanda, it looks like there's a lot of clinical applications in psychology and counseling session to help the
hmm
client to decide who are the alternative attachment figure to strengthen that attachment, try to locate those gaining resources.
hmm Yeah, and that's a huge part of like the application of like helping them recognize that and like
Yeah.
encouraging them towards community. And like encouraging them towards like not only those alternate attachment figures, but also like healthy people who have a secure attachment. Like in a study on adult children of alcoholics,
Yeah.
talking about that process of gaining a secure attachment. It's like confusion, figuring all this out, all these things. And then there's like this process of like transition and
Yeah.
surrounding yourself with people who are healthy and monitoring your thoughts so you don't fall back into those thoughts and like continuing to pursue those healthy connections. So it's fascinating when you learn more about it and you realize that like there's actually a lot that we can do that's within our control. Like help our clients learn to process and verbalize and like perceive, themselves and others in relationships and help them get connected with those healthy relationships and yeah, identify those people who can be
Mhm.
that safe space.
And amenity is a very powerful concept because for individual therapy here, individuals come to a counselor or psychologist, they want change. They want to make things happen. That's why they come. And
Yeah.
according to attachment therapy or theory, is a lot of the actions that we do, even though we live in an individual society here, a lot of time we have the
hmm
assumption we do everything just independent by ourselves. But a lot
hmm
of our behavior, according to attachment theory, is really attachment based. Our self-esteem is based on the relationship or the
hmm
past relationship, the attachment. So in here, you can really strengthen the individual therapy rather than just working with the individual about internal. We can add on that alternative attachment figures to strengthen
Mm.
these. That's powerful here.
Yeah, I really like that.
And
It is
especially for a
really
lot of
cool.
individuals, they might be isolated, they don't recognize it.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Well, and a lot of people don't realize it. And so yeah, bringing up those
Yeah,
conversations and
yeah,
I think it's great because yeah, expanding that conversation that way
yes.
is wonderful because if like we want to help, we want to support, we want to empower and help them heal and work through things. Um and then also like not wanting to do the work for them or I don't want you to rely on me to make everything okay.
Mm,
I will help you, but like empowering them. And
mm.
so being able to like empower them in that community, I feel like is really cool because yeah, I really like that because it's helping
Yes,
enrich their
yeah.
life outside of the session, right?
In a way, when we do counseling, we do the self-care inventory. And
hmm
so we can add this inventory for alternative attachment figure. Because according to attachment theory or just the social research, no matter how much we think we are in an individualistic society, we have to rely on each other. We are social beings. And that's a big part of
Yeah.
well-being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, so this
Yeah.
research that you're doing here, the ESA, the one second here, I forgot the earned secure attachment.
I mean, we've said what it is, so I'm sure ESA works.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure over, yeah. And then the alternative attachment figure here, there's a very powerful here. Hey, how about Amanda? You
Mm.
tell me a little bit. Well, obviously you're doing this research, you're in this
Yeah.
a black hole, and what are something that you thought, wow, that was cool, and I learned something new here doing those research.
Yeah. Something really cool that I learned. Oh, there's a lot. Um, I think I there's a lot. I think one thing that's been really cool is like exploring some like alternative newer approaches to like exploring what the individual's attachment style is. Like there's like it's called
Oh,
like a sea voyage interview. It's a lot more like narrative. But it's a
okay.
little bit it's like a way to explore like the current perception of their attachment relationships and kind of but it's like if you were a ship, like where would you go to harbor? And it like helps actually identify some of those alternate attachment figures, helps to see some
Right.
of that style. And so like something like that is super cool. And then like looking at some of the
Mm.
biological markers of like it's like the ABCs and the REIP. I don't remember what it stands for. Um,
Okay.
but there's
Yeah.
this one study that like talks about um, with like those interventions, how you actually notice like reduced amygdala activity and you actually notice improvements like biologically in the brain
Oh,
and those changes. So that's really cool. And I think my goal with that is to try and like
yeah.
the adult
Wow.
attachment interview is usually the main way to measure how
Yeah.
people measure like secure and insecure attachment. But there's some criticism on again that it's like you're just talking about past things. And so I'm exploring what
Okay.
adding assessment to that or revising it or some sort of thing with some of those new ways and some of that biological research might look like.
Oh, that's really cool here, Amanda, because you mentioned about the traditional adult attachment interview is based on the self-report, and especially a lot of
Hmm.
clients, if they have the narrative or we call it the cognitive distortions, the
Hmm.
results can come very inaccurate. And I guess a lot of people do those attachment by the online free sort of questionnaires. We don't know how accurate
Yeah.
it is. And
Hmm.
yeah, I'm quite interested to know about this. Is it the C void narrative approach?
Yeah, I think part of what's cool about it is that it's a little bit more
Yeah.
present focused. And there's
Okay.
there's like a set of questions to talk about like control. There's
Mhm.
sets of questions to find out like, yeah, it's like
Mm.
okay, if you were a ship and you're going on a voyage and who might be on the
Yeah.
boat with you? And like if there was a
Mm.
storm, like is there somewhere
Mm.
close by that you can stop? And so it's a little bit um maybe a metaphor isn't the right word, but it's there's a little bit of an artistic, that imagery part of it that kind of
Mm.
helps it to maybe connect with the right brain a bit more and
Yeah.
be a bit less like, oh, I have this narrative, like this idea about what my childhood is like, which, it can overlap.
Mm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's preliminary, like the study's like 2025 or 2026, like it's very new,
Mm.
but it's super cool. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do is look at like all the new things that have come out and try and find common spaces. And it's based
Wow.
on, yeah, the narrative. So,
And then what is the name for this exercise again? C void narrative? Because
yeah,
it sounds really cool, that I would love to do it right now, it's cool.
yeah, let me
Compared to
see.
answering the questionnaires online, yeah.
Yes, yes. Let me see. I have the
Yeah, this one is
document here.
very exploratory.
Yes, it
Yeah,
really
first
is.
person focus. Yeah.
I just have to, I have like 60 documents on my computer, so I have to find it. But
Oh, funny slowly here.
um,
It almost sounds like a little bit of a gestalt. You look at this image, what do you see?
yes, yeah, absolutely. And I really like that and like the intuitive aspect of it.
Yeah. Wow.
It'll probably go quicker. Here we go. Aha, that was the author. Okay. Yeah, so it's called the Sea Voyage interview as a conversational method for strengthening the sense of psychological safety and security.
Oh, see void interview. Okay, wow. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, I think it's super cool. So it like explores a little bit, but it also like builds and
Yeah.
helps like again identify those like alternative attachment figures, those sources of strength, those coping methods. Um, so it's like a little bit of an assessment, but also like kind of strength based.
Mm. And also I find it fascinated by the idea of the biomarker measuring the activity of the amygdala. Because it's almost a little bit like the sci-fi movie because we have the Apple Watch these days, and maybe in the future they can measure like this. They can say, "Hey, we go on a whether this partner, spike up your amygdala or not." Think about it, yeah, there a lot of things can happen in the future. We don't know.
We don't.
We don't know whether we want it or not. But anyways, my watch said we are not a good match.
I mean, really,
Yeah,
the way technology is progressing, I mean, some would have thought we would have had flying cars by now, but I mean, I'll take ChatGPT, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, so
Um,
let's go back to the ESA here, Amanda here. This earn secure attachment here. What are some of the research recommendation of these are the factors encourage that to update, change, improve, strengthen a new sort of attachment for individuals?
hmm Yeah, so the one that we've already talked about, the alternate attachment figure or alternative
Yeah,
attachment
okay.
figure.
Yes, yeah.
Um, a lot of those often end up being grandparents. And so it's
Oh,
not just
yeah.
like having someone that's around, like it very much is like the quality of that relationship. It needs to be one where they're like not worried
Mm,
about that person leaving and knowing that their needs are met.
yeah,
So that
yeah.
obviously gets a little bit harder to have that secure of a relationship when it's someone who doesn't like live with
Yeah.
you. Um, so there's that one. There's like the concept of mentalization or like reflective functioning, just being able to like make, yeah, and even just being able to make sense of what they've been through. So like family of origin work. So being able to process through some of
Mm,
that stuff, some of those earlier years, and like making sense of that and developing kind of clarity on that. Also, actually, another thing, which I think is super important, is like an intentional desire to do the work. So, like,
mm,
intentionally just, yeah, like just being like intentional to put the work in to heal. That's another factor. It's just somebody who's willing to do that. Um, and then even just like emotional regulation is
mm,
a big like difference. So it's interesting. You think like, if we actually just like change all of these things and help them to develop like the stronger emotional regulation, the mentalization ability, will that actually like will they be like will that help them to have a secure attachment or do you change that? And so it kind of gives us all these things to look at. But yeah, those are some of the things. Psychotherapy, long-term psychotherapy, right? Where and part of that is talking through those
mm.
things and processing some of those earlier years.
Really interesting here because you mentioned about the mentalization and also the reflection here, especially some of the counseling psychology work with the family of origin or maybe even the genogram to look at all these and to kind of understand the background is a big thing.
hmm Yeah, it's really cool as you look in further and you get, more of that insight into like, oh, wow, there is a
Yeah,
lot that we can do as
yeah,
therapists to help support this. Like it's not some far off wishy-washy concept. And maybe there's some things that need to, be considered like, more of an interdisciplinary approach. Again, like that cognitive and like
yeah.
developmental thing. But yeah, it's nice to know that it's like, oh, I can empower you to process these things, make sense of them, develop new narratives, um, empower you into positive community.
Yeah. And Amanda, when you're talking about the family of origin and also the alternative attachment figure being the grandparents, and also
Mhm.
early on you talk about self-report can be inaccurate. It just brought me to
Mhm.
think about, for example, myself when I was growing up. I think the early years, my grandparents is actually raising me because both of my parents had to work and but if you were to think back, I absolutely do not remember anything within the first maybe 5 years that they are walking me to school. I mean, I remember they walking me to school,
Yeah.
but I don't know the details. So
Mhm.
yeah, I wonder how in the therapy it's gonna work for some of the individuals about the self-report and the inaccuracy. I mean, I can talk.
Yeah.
My grandparents already passed away. I cannot talk to them, but yeah, otherwise
Mhm.
still able to report more accurate than me thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially because you don't like we learn a lot in those first couple years,
Yeah,
but
we
it's
do.
like so
Yeah,
somatic, right? Like it's not
yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah, I don't remember what I was doing the first 2 years of my life. But
Oh,
there's a lot of
yeah.
like unconscious
Mm.
things that I learned about the world that were like deeper than a verbal level. So finding ways to work through those things and figure out what those things are and those worldviews and those beliefs. But yeah, you can't really fully go through and be like, well, when you were 2 years, 1.5, what thing happened?
Yeah.
Because that's not necessarily information that we're going to be able to get, right? So,
And Amanda, I'm thinking about the clinical implications. For example,
Mhm.
let's say when a client coming for ADHD assessment or autism assessment, very
Mhm.
typically we'll ask for the client consent. I mean, we'll
Mhm.
share some forms with them, and some of the forms has to be filled by their parents, caregiver to report about the early years ADHD, obviously with the client consent. I wonder for
Mhm.
this sort of family origin work, it would be actually
Mhm.
very beneficial to use the similar approach because the standard approach for ADHD is they fill out the adult ADHD assessment questionnaires. With the consent, they also pass those forms to two or three teachers, parents to fill in to gather the data accurately.
Mm.
So it looks like
Yeah.
the implication for some of this attachment work will be quite collaborative with the client consent.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's because really you think like, yeah, why not do that for this, right? And
And also the accuracy of
especially
the data is important. Otherwise, I'll be just making it up.
Well, and it's crazy
Yeah.
because there's some things like, you know what, sure, maybe I went through some things when I was younger, but there's certain things that like as I grow up, I'm like,
Yeah.
I had a narrative about that because like like someone's like, "Oh, that happened." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that was bad." And it was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that was actually pretty normal."
Yeah.
But you create these narratives where it's like, "Oh, I can't believe that was so hard." I'm like, "Oh, that actually like wasn't." But this narrative gets built, right? And so to be
Yeah,
able
totally.
anyways, I mean, I could go on, but I really, yeah, I love that the concept of like, okay, then let's expand like who we're asking, right? Like with those interviews where you give sheets to parents, teachers, and
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah.
a lot of
Because in
implication.
psychology, the accuracy is important too. Otherwise, we'll be solving the
Mhm.
wrong narrative or problem.
Yeah, that's deep.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, because other modalities already is doing it. The autism, neurodivergent assessments, ADHD, the collaborative approach, and or maybe people are already doing it in the attachment work here, but it also help to branch out when we do attachment work, not just individual,
Hmm.
but in a collaborative approach, go along with the attachment theory. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, that fits into some of that critique, right? Of like attachment theory, like maybe it could be a little more collaborative with other disciplines and perspectives
Yes.
and
Yeah.
yeah, gaining more information, right? Not just like,
Yeah.
mm,
Wow. That's great clinical implications here. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
Wow, that's yeah.
Hey,
There's a
Amanda, I
lot.
have a
There's so
question
much.
here.
Okay.
You mentioned a few things here about the strategies to build that ESA, the earned security attachment, the
Mm,
alternative attachment figure, the
mhm,
biomarkers, the mentalization reflection with the counselor or family or of origin work, and also the internal desire to heal. Tell me
mhm.
more about the intentional desire to heal.
Yeah.
What does the
Okay. And
research say about this, to measure their desire and intention here?
yes. Um, I don't have the specific measures off the top of
Okay, yeah,
actually it's pretty easy to get. But and the thing about this study, the
yeah,
limit, I guess, to it is that like part of the challenge actually of it is that like the study where they reference this, it's like developing a theory of like a grounded constructivist theory of like earned secure attachment. So like how to get earned
yeah.
secure attachment. The challenge with this though is that like the sample is like 75% students who are like in counseling or like therapy,
Okay, yeah.
um, which is actually interesting in itself because uh, I feel like it also indirectly highlights the importance of psychoeducation
Mm-hmm.
because like this transformation in their attachment style, um, we're like we need, the study is like we need to kind of look further because this is a lot of counseling students, so that's kind of skews the results a bit. But we know that like, as counselors and in school for counseling, self-reflection is a really big thing to manage our bias and to make sure that we are honoring each person's intersectionality. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so that self-reflection could, and this is, I'm speculating here, I'm putting pieces together, but like there's a chance that that self-reflection also, and that like that guided self-reflection, that psychoeducation, you're learning about what is attachment, what is, who am
Mm-hmm.
I, how does this affect me, how am I moving forward? There is that chance that that like psychoeducation kind of plays a role also
Mm-hmm.
in that and just having the information because a lot of people don't, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's interesting too, because when this term, um, the intentional desire to heal, it almost
Hmm.
reminds me of the ah, the trans-theoretical model of change, the pre-contemplation, contemplation, planning, actions, relapse management, that cycle here, when we work on the client about the desire to heal, go through those stages. I wonder whether the research also kind of collaborate a little bit or it's a different concept.
Yeah, like just, and that's like that is the thing is
Mm,
for those like going through those stages, and that like I I have yet to flesh out that part.
uh,
I have a list of the measures that they've kind of used to measure it, and there's quite a few,
okay. Yeah.
like some relational security measures and tests. But
Yeah.
I think like here we go. Let me just see if uh, let me see. So okay, I thought I wrote the lines down here. But this like I guess the words more specifically used in the study are like
Mm,
intentional to resolve trauma.
okay. Intention to resolve trauma. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so a little bit
Yeah.
more specifically,
Hmm.
um, So like there's this like, okay, being intentional to resolve trauma, overcoming setbacks and barriers to
Mhm,
growth. So like being determined, like if you lapse in thinking, it's like being
mhm,
determined to move forward or to adjust that thinking.
mhm.
Again, those attachment figures, therapy, education, self-help. Um,
Yeah.
but then those all kind of go into like, okay, all those little meta conditions kind of go into like, okay, now we're making interpersonal changes, right? So we're
Okay.
making peace with the past, um, taking like small, intentional, intentionally calculated risks.
Yeah, I like it how the research touch on these strategies because for clinical for clinical implications, we always have to discuss with clients about their transparency and their intentions
Hmm.
and the change and what sacrifices required to make that change. The
Yeah.
short-term disadvantage, long-term advantage, risk and benefits. I like it how the studies include that as one of the recipe here for change, because it's definitely one
Hmm.
of the things to discuss with the client in the therapy sessions.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, because I mean, it makes sense, right? Like if somebody doesn't want to do the work or they're not ready to heal, like
Mhm.
how are you going to help them heal if they don't want to or they're not ready to, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, they have to walk the path. Yeah. Or they have
yeah,
to
and
at
it's like
least understand what is the path involved.
yeah, and it's like okay, yes, and so like even yeah, that psychoeducation and helping them understand, and I think that's part of why like it emphasizes like the psychotherapy, right? Because it's like yeah, like there's things that you can work through rather quickly, but when you think of this like this psychoeducation and like working through these different narratives and like overcoming setbacks and as you're growing you have a setback, like that's not something that just happens in like 2 hours, right? Like this takes time and then as you're working through it, things come up. And it's like something definitely to be patient with, right? But
Wow.
yeah.
So Amanda, here today we talk a lot here about your capstone, about the
Mhm.
earn secure attachment, and a lot of the
Mhm.
strategies to help client to avoid getting stuck and build a
Mhm.
new secure attachment. That is really, really groundbreaking here. And next time when you come again, I would love to hear about the results of this paper.
Yeah, I'd love to share it. I mean, after all the writing, it is definitely nice to be able to talk about it. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Amanda, we will end it here today. And once again, we are really happy to have you and we'll invite you back ASAP.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and we'll talk soon.
Amanda.